But I'm sitting here thinking, we are on the heels as we wrap up this episode of having just watched the Boston Celtics win the NBA championship. Why am I talking about that on Zero Blitz? I was thinking about this today. The Celtics, for years, for several years, have heard blow it up, get rid of your dynamic duo, 107 playoff games together, no championship, this is a waste, without any context to why they weren't able to win the big one. It was just, they just choke. Is there not a lesson sometimes when you look at this and say, hey, stay in the course and not just change for the sake of change? The Celtics just won a championship on it. And it makes me think of the Bills and the Cowboys and any other team that we're sitting here saying, well, they just can't get it done. You got to blow it up. Do you? Like, sometimes you have to look at championships, I think, with the roundness of perspective to why a team didn't win and understanding that every year's playoff journey is a new one. And blowing it up just to blow it up doesn't make you closer to a championship team. It just makes fans feel better about the sake of change. I think that right now you could look at teams like the Cowboys and the Bills specifically and say the Celtics teach them a lot about patience.
I agree. And it made me think of the 2006 Chargers. I mean, going way back, they go, I believe it was 2006. Correct me if I'm wrong, but they go 14-2, have a really fluky loss. It fumbled interception to the Patriots. Patriots go on the AFC Championship game and they fire Marty Schottenheimer. It's like, you just went 14-2. We overreact to single instances in the playoffs. And it's especially harder in the NFL than it is the NBA. Like, NBA has 7 games. If you have a bad game, you can bounce back and win it in 6 or 7 games as a series. NFL, you got one shot. And if you lose, like the Bills have, I think the Bills, when you were talking about it before you mentioned the Bills, that was a team that popped in my mind of just because they haven't won yet, doesn't mean there's some fatal flaw there. Like, they just haven't won yet. Like, Tyler Bass missed a field goal at the end. Like, that's going to happen. These coin flip things happen all the time in the NFL. And I think there is something to be said about staying the course. I think there also is a point like the Minnesota Vikings got to at the end of last year where you kind of look at each other and you say, we're not going where we need to go with Kirk Cousins. Why pay him $180 million again? Now, they tried. They really did. But I think there's something to be said about knowing where you are, self-scouting well enough to say, do we stay the course like the Celtics did, or is it time to kind of make a change?
Well, I think one of the big differences I see between the Celtics and the Cowboys is how far they got in the playoffs when they did have those good teams. Like, to have multiple times making it to the finals, another several years making it to the conference finals recently. Like, your final 2, final 4 before you make that final 1. Like, you are winning in the playoffs. I think what I struggle with Dallas in terms of how do we envision their road to an eventual Super Bowl is they just can't even make the NFC Championship. They haven't done it in close to 30 years now. And I think at some point that does become this, as much as the players want to be like, we don't control what happened before we get here. Like, this is part of your culture. This is part of what you are going to hear about all the time and what you are motivated to try and break. And so to me, I think that's where I would ask myself, because again, we're going to see a really interesting conversation with the Cowboys if they don't advance this year of, hey, they've got 3 guys they're going to have to decide if they're going to pay. And if you don't get where you want to go, is it the players? Is it the culture? Is it the coaching staff? Is it all of it? But to me, the ability to win something in the playoffs, even if you're not the rare statistical team that is able to go all the way, that's where we see the difference.
I hear you on that. And you're totally right. It all makes sense. My pushback is, if I told you today that whoever's picking in the draft next year could draft somebody that would be as good as Dak, people would freak out. But the Cowboys in a year are going to make a decision on whether or not they're willing to give Dak that kind of money. And the answer could be no. For what? Like, if you're telling me your plan is I'm going to draft Shedeur Sanders, if I told you Shedeur could turn out to be Dak, people would be doing cartwheels in the street for that. But like, in the moment, they don't want Dak anymore. It's like, that's where I feel like it's just change for the Cowboys.
And you'll also have to see if Dak still wants the Cowboys, because they can't tag him and they can't trade him. So he's going to have that. And I think the question isn't, is Dak good enough, or is the Cowboys? It might be, is that the right marriage in a year?
And I also, just to interject here, we always hear, all of us hear, oh, we got to get rid of the quarterback. We got to trade a quarterback. We got to get rid of Dak or whoever it is. It used to be Matthew Stafford with the Lions. Oh, we got to. I always ask, okay, cool. Cut your quarterback. Trade your quarterback. That's great. You tell me who your quarterback is week 1 of this season. You got to answer that. That's what these NFL teams have to answer. When we sit here and play armchair quarterback about like, oh, just like that.
Head coach too.
Head coach too. It's easier to find head coaches. I will say that. But quarterback wise, like, if you want to get rid of your quarterback, that's great. You know, your quarterback's going to be week 1 is probably going to be like Sam Darnold. Like that's who you're going to be settling for. You're going to have something like that happen.
Frank
to you.
is very concerned about Sam Darnold.
Very concerned about Sam.
Look,
but,
you think Frank's concerned? Look, I would take Sam Darnold over what I like right now. I'm trying to figure out if Aiden O'Connell or Gardner Minshew is going to win the job, and I got guys that follow the team that are out there tweeting practice looked really bad for both the quarterbacks and the OTAs. I'm like, son of a biscuit.
You know what they'd be tweeting if Sam Darnold was there? OTAs look really bad because Sam Darnold stinks. Like he would just be the next problem. But here's the thing too about championships, stay the course and all that. Something that everybody hates because we want the NFL to be the ultimate answer. What we saw on the field is real. The NFL's a lot of luck. A lot of luck. Let me say that again. Whether you win a championship in the NFL or even the NBA, NHL, Major League Baseball is a lot of luck. The coin flips came your way. David Tyree pinned a ball against his helmet. Malcolm Butler read a play and caught a ball. Like, nobody talks about Malcolm Butler's catch, by the way. He made a great catch. The stuff like that happens. Or the punt the San Francisco 49ers had last year doesn't bounce off their guy and the Chiefs don't recover it. And the 49ers go on to win a Super Bowl. A lot of these things is just luck. It's just the NFL is so competitive that it's just a bunch of series of flipping coins. And you just hope that the coin flips on your side more times than not.
Well, and it's not even equivalent to any of the other sports because you don't have this 4 out of 7 situation. You have one time. Right. And so there is more variability that you have to allow for in the NFL. And I've talked to general managers about this where they're like, hey, I can't just assume the best team is going to win. Best team might win 4 out of 7. It's less likely the best team wins 1 out of 1 than it is that the best team wins 4 out of 7.
Jori, the best team I've ever seen is the 2007 New England Patriots, and it's not even close. If you were to ask me 20 years from now, who's the best football team you've ever seen? 2007 Patriots. You know what? They picked a bad day to have a bad day. It just happens.
You're also dealing with people, where as much as we have all of this outburst of analytics, and I think that there's a lot of good analytics does for the game, even though sometimes I'm listening to people talk and I'm like, I have no clue what you're saying. But even so, I think that you just still have the human emotion element of it that we just can't control for.
Which is why I don't believe rosters and payments are made necessarily for championships. I believe guys get paid for proximity. If you are putting my team in the range of proximity where we can contend, that's why every former NFL player I've ever worked with says the same stupid phrase. Get in the dance, you got a chance. They all say it for a reason because it's about proximity. And look, Dak may not be winning Super Bowls. We all understand that. But there are a ton of teams that would kill for Dak right now because he will give them proximity. And the Celtics didn't blow up their dynamic duo because they gave them proximity. And that to me is just... It's a lesson. It's a lesson we're learning from the NBA Finals.